So now we'll go into our second speaker, Dr. Marilyn Gracie Augustine, who, by the way, I had a privilege of meeting recently in Madras Christian College when I was doing a story on the college. So nice to meet you again, Gracie, Dr. Marilyn Gracie. And I would just like to introduce her before I tell you the topic she's going to be speaking on. So, Dr. Marilyn Gracie Augustine is an assistant professor of history at Madras Christian College. Her research specialization is in immigration during the colonial era. She was awarded a PhD for her dissertation titled South Indian Women Immigration to the British Colonies with special reference to their ordeals and assimilation 1834 to 1920. That was the period she was looking into. Dr. Marilyn joined the Faculty of History at Madras Christian College in 2009. She successfully completed the UGC Minor Research Project as Principal Investigator and the United Board for Higher Education Project as Co-Investigator. Co-authored the book Echoes of a Silent Legacy, a pictorial history of the Portuguese, Dutch, and the Danes in Tamil Nadu. She currently serves as archives in charge of Madras Christian College Archives. By the way, that's where I met her. We welcome Dr. Marilyn Augustine to speak on the topic Print and Progress, Press in India's Social Evolution. So over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you so much, ma'am. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers for considering me to do this talk on. And initially, it was I was like going through it was not my research area, so I had to go through a lot of resources to understand it. But after Father Gaurav Nair's talk, and I think the next person's talk, I understand that there is a lot of overlapping, but I will ensure that I will complete it early because most of it is already done by Father already in his talk. So I
You
can
also,
share.
by the way, have 16 to 18 minutes, so just
Yeah,
to
I'll
inform you that.
finish. I think I should finish before that.
Yes.
I'll just share. So I made a very short PPT on it, and I thank Sir John Matthew for helping me to put it in the PPT. Now, I am actually basically a history teacher, so I look into the entire aspect of printing when it comes to the freedom movement as something that had brought a lot of change in the Indian system itself. So what we have in today's society, I believe that we owe a lot to the Indian printing history that actually came up at that time. Now, is my PPT visible?
Yes, it is.
For me, it is not visible.
Yes, it is. Would you like me to share or you want to do it?
Yeah, actually, so I am unable to see it in my screen, but I'll manage it. Can you share it for me, sir?
Yeah, I will. No
Yeah,
problem.
thank you, sir. So it is about the society formation and what did the printing technology do for it is what I would be liking to, what I would like to discuss about. Now, we all know that it's been nearly 500 years since the missions came into India, which had been Catholic missions or Protestant missions. There have been different countries that are involved in it. There were Portuguese involved in it, the French who were Catholics, the Germans were Protestants, the British who were again Protestants. So we find that different missions have worked, and we find also different approaches that had been taken. But there were few things that were very common among the missions was how they spread the idea of evangelism, how they spread the love of God to the common people. Now, when they attempted to do this, one thing that they had to know definitely was the language. Now, India was a diverse country then, it is still diverse. And because it is diverse and because there were so many languages available, it became necessary for the missionaries to know the languages first. And once they knew the language, the next thing they went on is to, with the printing technology they had, they started bringing up tracts or pamphlets or published books or coming of newspapers and other things. Though the primary goal was to bring in the idea of bring in spread evangelism, we find that at a point of time, the side effects of what was done as printing from the printing technology made a big impact on the Indian society, which later on also contributed to the freedom movement. So when we look into the freedom movement, my presentation today will be on these four headings. It will be the spread of Western education. Now, when the missionaries first came up, one thing that they were very much concentrating was the coming of education and the spread of Western education in India. Later on, the British government also supported it, but initially the missions played a key role in spreading the Western education in India. That led to the rise of middle class. Now, that rise of middle class was the middle class that fought for the freedom movement in its initial stages. Later on, we find the mass coming in, but the rise of middle class is the middle class that founded the Indian National Congress. It's the middle class that wrote prayers and petitions to the government, that made the government to start legislative councils and have elections and form acts. So that was definitely the mission work that played a key role in bringing the middle class in the society. The second part will be on the promotion of languages. If we are today lingual states, as India has 28 states, and if we are lingual states and we are very proud of languages, then definitely the language identities come from the mission work. I'll elaborate on this when I dwell on this area. The next very important thing that the missionaries contributed was the social reform. Because they had to spread the love of God, they brought in all of them who were excluded in the society earlier into the fold for spreading evangelism, and the upliftment of the depressed classes and women automatically happened into it. And the last part would be on how the missions also contributed to the freedom movement and the interfaith dialogue that happened during that time, which definitely we wove to the diversity that we have in today's India also. So can we go to the next slide?
Yeah, we are on the next slide. We are on the next slide.
Thank you. So this is just a map of the various map of India and names of various newspapers that were started first in different parts of the country. Mostly all of them that I have mentioned here are missionary newspapers, and I will be touching on some of them, and paucity of time, I will not be able to talk about all of them, but some of them I will be definitely touching upon. But this is just for an understanding how from east to west to north and south, we find that the missionaries played a key role in bringing the newspapers, which were mostly the first newspapers that were brought in these particular languages and in regions. Now, moving on to the first part, how the education was spread through the newspapers that were started by the missionaries. I have two parts in this itself, just two slides on it. One, how the newspapers talk about the importance of education. And the second part is how the newspapers themselves became a tool of education. Now, I would like to quote here Samachar Darpan that comes from Bengal and from the Serampur mission. Now, they, from the beginning, were insisting on the English education and how English education should reach door to door and village to village, so that everybody gets, not only get the love of God, but at the same time is touched by the English education that was there. So they were insisting on, followed by this is when the Serampur mission starts many schools and colleges across the eastern part of India. I also would like to mention here another Assami journal that comes as, which is Arunodai. which again talks about education, specifically education for the women children, the girl children. Now, one different thing that Arunodaya plans here is it uses the Hindu Shastras itself and invokes the idea that Hindu religion never stopped women from going out or getting educated. So they were trying to revive the idea of allowing the Hindu women or Hindu girl children to come out of their houses and get educated get educated. And for this, we find the Gunabiram Barua, who writes in Arunodaya, he talks about how Hindu Shastras never stopped women from getting educated. The second part of this is how education was spread through the newspapers itself. Now, here I would like to mention the Malayalam newspaper Jnana Nikeshipam, which is literally translates to Treasury of Knowledge. Now, there are a lot of interesting factors that are talked about in this newspaper. Apart from crosswords that were there, we also find that there are stories on any new invention that happened in Western world was reported in this journal. For example, how the steam engines are mentioned in 1849, when the first run of the steam engine happens in England. We find that they talk about in 1849, they write, when steam engines begin their travel, the distance between towns seems to disappear. If a steam engine runs from Kochi to Chennai, Malayalis can reach Chennai within a day. Is a report that was put up in 1849, very much ahead of our time. We also find that they also provided extra information on cyclones, on earthquakes. They gave knowledge to the fishermen about how they should be careful in times of calamities, and what are the necessities they should carry in the boat, and various other things that are mentioned. So newspapers also played a key role as a tool of spreading knowledge in the vernacular languages. So that is how the idea of middle class, the spread of knowledge comes, and the middle class gets captivated with the newspapers as a tool to spread. The most important part that I was very particular is about the linguistic identities that that the missionaries created by bringing the newspapers and by bringing the vernacular newspapers. So one important thing is from South India when it is about Karnataka, and the Kannada literature actually was something that was built up by the Basel missionaries, and the compendium of the poems that comes from the Kannada literature was actually compiled in 1858 as Bibliotheca Karnataka by Herman Mongling, that actually earned him a PhD degree also. Now, the first newspaper, however, was Mangaluru Samachara in 1843, that again concentrated on publishing the poems, the hymns of Kannada literature. Now that contributed to the greater Kannada identity on how the Kannada language is very vast. Knowing it pretty well that the Kannada, present-day Karnataka was a part of Madras presidency at that time, the language identity played a key role in bringing the Kannadikas together through the Basel missionaries' contribution. My next example for this linguistic identity is the Assami journal, Arunodaya. Now, it is very interesting when the Serampur missionaries were initially working on the Assamese language, they understood that it is an extension of the Bengali language. They did not find the difference much, but it was Nathan Brown and Oliver Cutter, the Baptist missionaries later, who found that this language is little different from the existing Bengali language. And that is how they started writing grammar and dictionaries for the Assamese language. The statement that is given below is something that interested me. It says, the Ornode created mother tongue awareness in the psyche of those Assami people who began to consider Bengali as the language of the rulers. News from home and abroad published in the journal widened the frontier of the Assamese mind. So they consolidated the foundation of journalism in Assam on a broad agenda. So I think that was a very important thing that the journals did as far as creating linguistic identities is concerned, with the example of Karnataka and the example of Assami. The next slide, I have some of the pictures of the grammars that were written by the missionaries in different languages. So just to give an idea that many of the lingual identities were formed because of the missionaries' attempts to study the language and write a grammar for it, and also bring lexicons for every particular language. It's very surprising for me that William Carey did it for even Punjabi language. So this is just a slide for that. My main focus for today is, however, the social reform, though no doubt a linguistic identity was part of the social formation. And however, as far as reform was concerned for the women and depressed classes, we find that India at this point of time, the coming of the missionaries, there was illiteracy, there was a lot of social evils, including the sati, including the parda system, the widow sufferings, the child marriages. There were a lot of things apart from, along with the caste system problems that also existed. No doubt the missionaries and the newspapers played a key role in writing about this, including the slavery system in Travancore and the Malabar region was also concentrated on the newspapers during this period of time. Now, talking about the women and depressed classes, I would like to take the examples from the Bengal region again. The introduction about all the three papers were already done by Father. I would only like to talk about how the social reform ideas were brought in here, and mainly at the backdrop when the sati was predominant in Bengal region. So the Front of India, it denounced the sati, and it had fierce attack on the custom of infanticide also, because at that time they used to just throw the women child in the river Ganga. They take it to the Mela and throw the child in the river Ganga. So they had a fierce writing in the newspaper. However, I would like to concentrate more on Samachar Darpan that comes as a weekly in 1818. That took on many important aspects of the women problems, including the caste system and the women, the widow remarriage, the early marriage, and the issues of polygamy. I have two quotes that comes from the Samachar Darpan, which is on the next slide. I don't want to read through it, but both of them come in 1835. It is said that these were written by the women. The first one was written by the woman of Shantipur, a letter to the Samachar Darpan, and the next one is a letter written by the woman of Chinsura to asking why is it only the Brahmin women suffer, the Kshatriya women suffer because of widowhood, and they are unable to remarry when the other society women can do. The second letter talks about comparing the Indian women to the Western women. They ask for the rights just like the Western women have. For example, not consider women as a property, have women education, and consider them a civilized society. So this comes in 1835 as part, which comes as part of Samachar Darpan's articles. Now, it is not very clear whether the women themselves wrote, but it is still was considered and brought in 1835, much ahead of its time. The next
Dr.
one
Marilyn,
is,
a
yes,
couple
ma'am,
of
I'll finish.
minutes.
Yeah, I'll finish very quickly. The next one is Jnanodaya, which is a Marathi newspaper. And here comes the first female Dalit writer. Now she writes on how there was difficulty among some communities, the Mahar and Mang community, and the being a woman of Dalit community. So this is the available photograph of Mukta Salve, who is considered as the first female Dalit writer. And Jnanodaya actually carried this article, which was later published after her death. The next photograph is the writings that came up. The newspapers also played an important role in promoting the female education. I would cite Hitavadi here. Now, the picture, it may not be very clear, but We can see it is an open hut. It's just a photograph carried in the newspaper to convince the local population to send their children to school. And the one important thing that we need to note here is an open school that is shown here, where children are sitting in line to ensure that there is no problem of security or safety for the women children when they are sent to schools. We also see the women teachers standing in the front and the standing at the back side to just ensure and give some kind of assurance to the parents to send the girls' children to school. This comes in Hitwadi in 1862. The two other things that, as part of social reform, that has also carried over in the newspapers are the anti-opium campaign and the promotion of health that was also part of the newspaper campaigns, mainly Ornode. Now, Ornode did not have problems like the Bengali society, like the Sati or any other thing, but they had a different problem, the opium problem, because from their place, the opium was cultivated and sent to China. So we find that they had a series of articles written on anti-opium, and they also talk about how to avoid getting into addiction into opium. They also write on adultery. And there was also health-related promotional articles for vaccination, promoting medical science, especially in the conditions of famines, how to avoid famines, how to safeguard oneself during flood situation. These were also added as part of social reform articles. This is one of the last slides that I have, is about the freedom and the faith dialogue that was there. Now, most of the newspapers, there is always a debate on the missionaries were always in the middle, whether they were, because they were actually the agencies of the colonial countries that were ruling India. So the question was whether they were faithful to the people or they were faithful to the government, was always a challenge that the missionaries were put up. But no doubt there were many missionary newspapers that carried articles on the Indian freedom movement, whether it was Samachar Darpan or whether it was Arnodayam. We find that the articles about freedom movement and its necessity, the problems, anti-colonial articles were many that we find was regularly carried in these newspapers. They also collaborated with Arya Samaj, Brahma Samaj, Aligarh Movement, Theosophical Society, because they were also organizations that fought against the social evils. So many places we find that the Hindu journalists, the Christian missionaries collaborated with these organizations and writing articles or carrying over their articles in their journal, was a kind of a interfaith dialogue that was created
Dr.
between these.
Marilyn.
It's last, ma'am. You can move to the last one. So that's what Madras Christian College magazine, whatever I spoke on Madras, on these slides are there in the Madras Christian College magazine. The highlighted portions talk about the Gandhi's visit to India. The small portion talks about how Mr. M.C. Raja from the depressed classes comes into the Madras Legislative Assembly. So we find that magazines, Madras Christian College is a Scottish mission institution, so how they incorporated the women's rights and the freedom movement and everything together. I just put it up because I belong to this institution. As a conclusion, I would only like to reiterate that the missionaries played a key role in many of the identities that we hold today, the linguistic identities, the upliftment of the women, the upliftment of the depressed classes. We definitely owe to the print media that the missionaries brought in. And today, the missionaries have changed their idea, where they embrace more on digital platforms and the spread than print media. We find that digital platform plays a very important role. And unknowingly, I had Indian Currents of where father is also there, plays a very important role, as I like their tagline that says voice for the voiceless. So we find that the Christian missionaries, because they are bound by their commitment to the Dalits, tribal population, religious minorities, women and children, continue the legacy that was put forth by the early missionaries in this country. I once again thank the moderator and the organizers for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Indian Christian Day. Yeshu Bhakti Divas. Love, serve and celebrate.